hold on, I got a big one on. Oh yeah. See, that's what it's all about. That right there. You know, I might take the chance to talk about swim jigs. Someone actually left a comment asking me, maybe it was for a breakdown, how I use them or something, but I'll just kind of go over it. I have a feeling today this is going to be the way. This time of year, if I'm fishing up shallow for largemouth, I'm using this probably at least half of the time. What I look for when I'm looking for good swim jig water is anywhere from 0 to 7 feet deep is mostly what I target. And depending on what kind of cover is how I determine what weight I'm gonna throw. Right now I'm throwing 1/4 ounce because I'm fishing pretty shallow, and these weeds are almost growing up to the surface. So I want this thing to run just above the tips of the weeds. And if they're weeds that won't get snagged up on my jig, I'll actually fish in them. But it all depends on the cover. These weeds particularly it's just some grass and it's like half dead, so it's easy to get gunked up. So I like to run just above them. And if I see there's certain sets of weeds that I can determine I can swim it a little deeper. And I control the depth a lot of time just adjusting my tip. So when I throw up shallow, I'll put my tip up just to keep it above those weeds. And once it gets a little closer and I can see the depth, then I slow it down and put my rod tip down. And that is key. That is key, because the more time you're swimming without gunk on your lure, the more likely you'll get a strike. So that is what I would do in these weeds. So probably my other favorite cover to throw at are pad stems. And this can, this can be even later in the summer too, but a lot of times these pad fields are too thick to throw a swim jig. And so my favorite thing to do is to hit them before the pads get too mature. So when they're maybe just subsurface or thinned out, they're not quite thick yet, that is the absolute best time to target those pads with the swim jig. And I'm telling you, this is how big ones are caught. Absolutely. Let's see, what else do I like? I got a bite. Missed him. It felt small. And I would say my next favorite cover to throw at are reeds. What you want when it comes to pad stems or reeds, you want that jig to bounce through the cover, especially a little later in spring. when you're targeting a little bit more aggressive fish, you want that jig to be banging around. Sometimes it'll be jumping over reeds or pad stems, and these fish will smash it like it's a topwater too, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to cover water. When I don't know a lake like this one right here, I'm moving and throwing, because this time of year, one thing is for certain: there is at least a good portion of these fish that are up shallow, milling around these weeds looking for bait fish. And that's also what I'm looking for when I'm out here. What kind of bait is out here? And that'll determine what color I throw on. Now, trailer, I use Kitech most of the time, and I just vary in size and color. And I like to get away with a bigger presentation. Like, that's a pretty good size swim jig, and I'll even throw bigger than this. I like to use a bigger hook so I can throw on up to up to a 4.3 Kitech on the back of these bad boys. Now the problem is, if you do a smaller hook with a big trailer, you'll get short strikes a lot, and it's rather annoying. So I go with a big 5/0 hook on my swim jig setup here. Another thing that's great is some of these companies are coming up with weedless presentations, like a Texas rig, and that, I think, is worth it, because even though your hookup ratio isn't as good with that Texas rig, you're gonna get more bites. The more time it's in the water without gunk on it, the more likely you will get bit. And that is #1 problem with fishing this time of year in these weeds, is just that gunk is sometimes too much to handle. So yeah, I just flip through different colors. I go with a Texas rig. And the problem with gunk on your swim jig is that immediately affects the way it swims, even when it's a little bit. So the key is keeping it clean as much as possible. And if that means riding above the weeds, going with a 1/4 ounce, then that's what it takes. I suppose any type of paddle tail should work fine with this setup. I just like Kitechs, I think they're the greatest swim bait on the market, but everyone has their favorites, and I'm sure the others work just fine. I actually switched to a little bit more durable. When I'm on a good bite and I feel like these fish are gonna hit anything moving, I actually have another type of swim bait. Oh, that's not good. I actually have another type of swim bait that I'll throw on there. It doesn't swim, personally, I don't think it swims as nice as a Kitech, but when I feel like the fish aren't picky, then I can throw one of those on and it lasts forever, because you go through Kitechs. The problem with this idea is you're going through Kitechs, and these aren't cheap, so it's unfortunate. This is the #1 downside to doing this, is you go through a lot of Kitechs, and I repair mine so I could keep reusing them. Like these ones here have been repaired. So I'm just doing a little color change, seeing if I can get a different look, see what these fish are keying into. Sometimes I like a little orange, resemble a little perch belly. A lot of times green pumpkin. I keep it natural. I almost always keep, you know, unless I'm swimming some fish in some really dirty water, I'll keep it natural. I use a bluegill pattern on my jigs, and then just switch up the trailer. Oh, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna take a picture of that. Yeah, so anyway, that's how I switch it up. And then if it's super clear, I'll switch to a straight green pumpkin, less color, with a green pumpkin trailer. And that's if I'm, you know, just desperate for a bite. I got 3rd place in a tournament last year doing this exact technique, and it's a big fish magnet. So I'm going to just do some examples real quick. So in front of me, I see it's more shallow and the weeds are thicker. So I'll throw out there, tip up and reel fast, and you can still get some bites. And then as you get closer, you can lower the tip and slow it down, and that'll keep it clean. See, I just threw right up in that stuff, and I feel it. You got to shake it off sometimes when you're getting that gunk on there. You just got to jerk it really hard. And I recommend, when you're fishing cover like this, at least 14 pound. You can get away with it, but when you have to really wrench on these fish to get them out of cover, you know, I'm rocking 14, or actually on this one I got 20 pound on, and that's sufficient. And you can tighten that drag up a little bit and really pull on these fish. I'm actually surprised I haven't got a fish right here. I found this time of year, sometimes they're just a little more active a little bit later in the morning. It's still really cold here. I mean, I'm wearing my thermals right now. It may look nice, but it is chilly. But I'm still looking for these active fish. Some of these fish are going to be moving around. I found that the lower, ooh, I just saw a fish. The lower the swim jig is, the better. So it's whatever you can get away with. Like when it's thick, you know, if it's like big pad stems and you're not picking up a bunch of gunk, you know, you could throw on a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce and just ride it a little deeper, because I find that most of these fish are sitting on bottom, and although they're looking up, you're just a little more likely to get some thumps, especially if you're dealing with like 6 feet of water with those long pad stems. You just want to roll it a little lower. But most of the time when I'm dealing with this crap, because that's almost everywhere this time of year, even in pad stems, it gets gross in some of these lakes, I just rock the 1/4 ounce. And then I have the ability to slow it down without getting it in the gunk as well, which sometimes the speed is a factor. I was here last week And I pretty much outfished everybody doing just this. I honestly don't even think I caught a fish using a different lure. And it was a tough day. I mean, most of the guys I talked to either caught just a couple little ones or none at all. So this works when it's tough, especially when you're getting some of that deflection. Like when it gets real tough, get into those pads. If you have lily pads in your legs, this will work generally everywhere, even in open water, but I much rather fish it on some cover. But yeah, if you got pads, just have that thing bumping. You know you're doing it right when it's bumping the pad stems without getting snagged. Like a bump, bump, bump. And it sure is a fun bite. I mean, all of a sudden, slack line. And they hit it hard sometimes. It's fun. This is definitely a fun way to fish, and you cover water. There we go. Not a big one. But a fish nonetheless. That's about all that little guy can grab is that swim jig. I felt a little bump, so I let him have it a little longer so he could get one more gulp. Come on. Jeez, this fish was certainly not going anywhere. That's as little of a fish you'll probably catch if you're using this size setup here. And luckily he didn't destroy my bait, because I had just put this on. And when the bite's a little tough, you can even switch to just a belly weighted and just a swim bait, and then you don't have the skirt. And sometimes that little adjustment can buy you a few extra bites. And you can run that a little slower. Those belly weighted aren't that heavy oftentimes, depending on the size, of course. But you can run them a little slower and stay above those weeds, so it's in the strike zone for a little longer. So I just don't have enough bites to commit to this color. So it won't be long until I switch to maybe a green pumpkin. And then if that doesn't make a difference, then I gotta change depths. These bigger ones could be in a little deeper water maybe. The best time of year to throw this is basically mid. Hold on, I got a big one on. Mid-April. Oh yeah. See, that's what it's all about. That right there. Wow, you weren't going anywhere, were you? Well, I need a little assistance. So yeah, mid-April, but it just depends on the lake too. Some of these lakes are not ready for this. You can still get bit, but ideally you want the fish to be a little more active. And that usually, for smaller lakes, probably mid-April. Bigger lakes might take a little longer, you know, early May. Depends on what kind of water you're fishing. This is a smaller body of water here. Dang, you are not going anywhere. Holy crap. That's the best hook set I think I've ever got with one of these. So you can hook them good. But yeah, so depending on the water temps, I think this lake is like 56. But that's deceiving because this is a smaller body of water. A lot of the bigger lakes lately I've been hitting are high 40s. And the fish aren't quite there. You can get a few to bite, but this shines a little later when the fish are a little more active. I would say most lakes, basically, if you just say 1st of May is when it's money. And another thing you can look at is where are the lily pads? You know, if they're just barely subsurface or already hitting the top of the water, it's go time. When they're just stubs, just barely popping out of the floor, it might be a little early, but I still throw it. I definitely still throw it. But sometimes when those pads are like that, you're better off dragging a jig or tossing a Senko around. Little different idea. But yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. I want a couple more like that. And that would be a good day for mid-April. That was a little bit slower of a retrieve, so maybe they're not super active. It was in probably 5 foot of water. Yeah, good fish. And now I'm gonna remember what type of water that fish was caught in. So sometimes it's areas where the grass is very sparse. Sometimes it's only in areas where cover's really thick. And then you could sort of target those areas. You know, when you're in between those areas, you move a little faster, and when you get into those sweet spots, then you gotta slow it down, try to hit every inch. In this case, it's not much of a pattern because I only caught one so far. Well, I caught a couple, but one big one. I'm just seeing sparse in about 5 feet. So if I replicate that, then that's the contour I'm gonna follow. And I'm gonna look for that sparse grass. If it were in an open patch, you know, like a sandy bottom in between the weeds, then I would put a little more focus into those spots. But so far so good. Okay, sparse, medium depth. Got me a big bite. I was rolling it a little slow, and I'll still vary my retrieve just to see if I can find a pattern. Because this particular jig is Texas rigged. When I get a bite, I'm gonna just wait a hair longer before I set. And that obviously worked on that one. That fish was not coming off. But sometimes with this setup, with this Texas rig, you get a lot of short strikes, and that sucks because Usually that means you're going through Kitex or swim baits, whatever you use. Oof, there was a big one. Chasing. Okay, that tells me something too. Even if that wasn't a catch. In a little deeper water, sparse grass. See, lost another Kitech, but worth it. This one's been feeding. Another nice one. I thank my lucky stars every time I catch one and it doesn't bust up my Kitech. That's why I'm a little extra careful when I unhook them, just to keep that Kitech in good shape. I thought for sure it was gonna be bigger. Fought like it was a freaking 5 or 6 pounder. Let's go. Bye, bud. So there you go, guys. A little rundown of the swim jig. I think it's the most powerful lure for early to mid-spring. It's truly amazing for getting big bites. You know, this is a big presentation and I'm targeting some bigger fish for sure. If you want to get more bites and not just hunting for big fish, there's basically a lot of the swim jigs on the market only have a 3 or 4/0 hook, and then you could just rock, you know, like a 3.3 Kitech or 3.8 tops. Actually, you can even do a 2.8, and that would be, you just get a few extra bites. But me, I'm always looking for those bigs.